An active fat person has a much healthier metabolism than a sedentary thin person. Your weight or your body size doesn't dictate how healthy you are. 95% of people who go on diets to lose weight will regain that weight within 5 years. Exercise without weight loss is going to bring metabolic health. I think this huge appetite for Ozempic is a symptom of diet culture. I'm Azita Chellappoo. I'm a philosopher of science, and I'm interested in the ways that social narratives and biases about body size affect the science of obesity and what we think we know about the relationship between obesity and health. People who work in a field called fat studies, they tend to use the word fat. The idea is to reclaim that word not as a pejorative, but as a neutral descriptor to say there's nothing wrong with being fat. With terms like overweight, that's already building into the word an assumption that there is a normal weight that you can be over or you can be under. And with terms like obese, that's a very medicalized word that has these kind of connotations of disease or disorder. There's been historical work that traces the development of the thinness ideal back to the slave trade and the development of racial hierarchy amongst Europeans. Prior to slavery and colonialism within Europe, a diversity of body sizes was more accepted. So you think of these Rubenesque figures, these voluptuous women, and that was celebrated. And then in the course of the project of enslavement and imperialism, there was this need to establish this racial hierarchy backed by science. And part of that was distinguishing based on body types. Thinness became associated with Europeans. What we consider as normal isn't something that's fixed, and it certainly isn't fixed by the science. We live in a society that is full of fatphobia or weight stigma. This might be interpersonal, but it can also be structural. Bigger people are less likely to be hired, and you see that effect kicking in at a lower body size for women than for men. In medical contexts, doctors dismiss the concerns of bigger patients or attribute everything to their weight, which means that certain diagnoses get missed. People in public health and policy like to talk about obesogenic society or an obesogenic environment. It's an environment that sort of encourages people to put on weight. And in some ways, this is a positive move away from kind of older ideas that it's just all about individual willpower and individual choices. On the other hand, it still really locates the sort of health issue just in weight when health is about so much more than that. Weight stigma or fat shaming, it's not an effective tool for weight loss. In fact, it might make them slightly more likely to gain weight. We know that things like sexism and racism get under the skin. We know that that increases stress. Increased stress causes all kinds of long-term health effects. Fatphobia has the same kind of effect. An inclusive vision of health is one that acknowledges the ways in which social bias and social discrimination negatively impact health. It's a health concern as well. So fatphobia is a public health issue. We have to take into account the detrimental effects of diet culture, of the pressure to lose weight, and the ways in which people attempt to lose weight, which can also negatively affecting their health more than their body size. Fatphobia definitely contributes to body dissatisfaction, body dysmorphia, and to eating disorders of all kinds. We have things like very low calorie diets. So that's something which GPs still prescribes. That's 1,000 calories a day. Restriction can end up changing your metabolism to the extent that you always have to eat a small amount of calories to avoid gaining weight. This term obesity epidemic or even obesity pandemic was manufactured when the World Health Organization changed the thresholds for the body mass index. So overnight, millions of people became obese. Body size became linked to the potential sort of burden on health systems and economic burden, and it sort of fueled a panic about the apparent growing body size of the population, and it makes it seem like a very urgent public health crisis, which serves to kind of legitimize extreme measures. There are more effective ways that we can do things to improve lifestyle that aren't so focused on weight. We can get people to eat a balanced diet and move more, that isn't sending the message that you shouldn't be happy with the body that you're in. Ozempic, Wegovy, these semaglutide medications obviously have made a big impact. One thing that we've seen a resurgence of is this idea that something like Ozempic is kind of the easy way out. This idea that sort of stems from this longer history of thinking about fatness as a moral failing, as a failure of willpower. Body size is not just about individual choices, but it's also about your microbiome, it's about your gut, it's about your genes, your epigenetics, so how the environment interacts with your genes, the social environment that you find yourself in. I think that we should be a little bit wary of the regulations and who has access to them and where. So we have celebrities that are sort of famously taking it and kind of pushing similar medications. I think Serena Williams was in an advert for a semaglutide medication. You have people that are desperate to lose weight, that are trying it, even going on the black market because I'm desperate to lose weight. We haven't properly thought about the side effects. There are certainly things like gastroparesis, so delayed stomach emptying. There are bad things that can happen. This is something that we've seen in weight loss interventions in the past. Because weight is seen as such an important factor, if not the determining factor, then weight loss is something that needs to be pursued at all costs, even when weight loss interventions can have quite serious side effects. The Open University cares about inclusion. It's a great space to have these kind of empathetic, inclusive and open discussions. I'm interested in deconstructing these mainstream narratives and looking at things in a fresh new way, and I think that's what the Open University does really well. It's like introduce these kind of critical thinking skills to take a step back and sort of examine things from a different perspective, and you might find that, you change your mind. I'm Azita Chellappoo. I'm a lecturer in philosophy at the OU, and this is Beyond the Books.